Hi everyone, my name is Alex Mushat. I come from the National University of Music in Bucharest. And I'm here to talk to you about my PhD thesis. It's called The Drummers of 1970s Progressive Rock, Origins, Influences and Elements of Language. But anyway, I'd like to start my presentation with a question actually. And this is a question that I asked myself way back in 2022. And the question was, what happens when you take rock music and you place it within a university almost exclusively known for studying classical music? At the National University of Music in Bucharest, which you can see here, you can study these guys. You can study Bach, you can study Mozart, and of course you can study Beethoven. But you can't really study rock music. So you can imagine in 2022 when I came with my proposal of a PhD study of 1970s progressive rock, I wasn't really fitting the mold. But, well, this is the reason why I'm here today, to talk to you about how this dream became a reality and how I got my PhD title last Tuesday. Yay! Okay, so you may ask yourself, well, what can you study at the National University of Music? That's UNMB in Bucharest, and this is information I've gathered from our website. You can study tons of things, instrumental and vocal performance, classical and contemporary composition, conducting, musicology, musical education, church music, opera if you're into opera, and you can also study a bit of sound engineering and jazz and pop music, but I might say that these are a bit underdeveloped, and these two faculties really need to be developed further. So, well, in 2022 it felt as if while everybody else was trying to study this, I was trying to study this. Yeah, so that's a bit of a stretch, and I remember when I wanted to work with Professor Valentina Sandu Dediu, and you can see her some of her bio here. I thought she was going to push back because it's not exactly an actual, I didn't think it was a relevant topic, and I actually stood in front of the mirror like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, practicing a speech on why this should be studied academically. And so I told her that because I like her work on post-war Romanian music, and I'll get to that in a minute, musical stylistics and rhetoric, that I really want her to be my supervisor. And when I told her that, she paused for 3 seconds and she said, okay. Take the exam, and if you pass, I will supervise you and we'll make it work. And we did. She did, and we did. But anyway, I had to ask myself these questions. Is this serious enough to be studied academically? Can it be analyzed academically? And of course, the question on everyone's mind was, does it belong here? This is one of the drummers that really influenced my playing. This is Roger Taylor from Queen in 1976. But I don't want to take you all the way back to 1976. I want to take you back to 2002 and show you a photo of me in 2002. And this is around the time that I realized there's a musical instrument called the drum set. And I also became strangely attracted to British pop culture. I became attracted to Mr. Bean, Monty Python, and, like a lot of people, the Beatles. You can see that's not really the real Paul McCartney, but it's the best I can do. However, I've spent about 20 years of my life playing in rock bands and pop bands, and it never occurred to me that I could analyze this academically. And I have here for you 2 quotes that I think are very eloquent in presenting my mentality up until the age of 27. Because to me, rock music has always been rebellious. And you can't really be rebellious with a supervisor and sitting behind a desk. And so Christophe Dantan says, academic rock criticism struggles with a perennial paradox. It targets an object that draws its legitimacy from rebellion and therefore resists academic inquiry. Now, there's another lyric from Alice Cooper, School's Out in 1972. School's out for summer, school's out forever. I'm bored to pieces, no more teachers, no more school. However, I did realize that, ironically, writing a PhD thesis on progressive rock at the National University of Music seemed more rebellious than not writing one. So the actual rebellious thing to do was to go ahead and try to challenge the system a bit. Because I thought to myself, why is a Beethoven manuscript considered worthy of study here at our conservatory, but not the way Ringo Starr wrote the Beatles on his bass drum? Both can be analyzed and both tell a story. Now, I think, of course, progressive rock drumming matters, and I've written down some reasons why. In the 70s, prog rock drummers played in odd time signatures, they expanded the vocabulary of the drums, they used improvisation and interplay. And I've done some archival work. This is a screenshot from a 1970s Ludwig. Ludwig is a drum manufacturer, it's a catalog. And they say, upstage your lead guitarist, because for the first time, people weren't coming to see Elvis or Jimi Hendrix for some weird reason. They came to see the drummer. So I thought that was a good story. But did we have challenges? Yes, we did have challenges, and I've written down 3 of them. None of the 16 PhD eligible supervisors specialized in jazz, pop, or rock music. What we did is, legally, you have to have a supervising committee, and they don't have to be one of those 16 PhD eligible supervisors. So we gathered everyone with an interest in this type of topic. We've had barely any academic sources in Romanian written about progressive rock, and rock drumming isn't taught at UNMB. It's jazz drumming, but that is a bit different. So how did we manage to put together this committee? We had Cătălin Crețu. Some of you may know Cătălin from Work Package 8. He teaches electronic musical composition. We had Ștefan Firca, another professor at UNMB who teaches pop music history. And last but not least, we had Andrei Tudor, who's a very famous Romanian pop music composer. So it's the 4 supervisors and me, and of course these people had a lot more experience than I did, but for some reason it felt as if we were researching together. And that was a great thing. So how did we do it? It was an interdisciplinary approach. This was the only way we could tackle this topic and face the challenges. I did practice-based artistic research, which means I played on drums the songs I've analyzed in my work to see how they feel around the drum kit. Musicological analysis, archival investigation of commercial catalogs, historical research, because of course I believe a lot of, if not every artistic endeavor is rooted in some sort of historical, political, and cultural context. And I mentioned before we didn't have a lot of sources, so this is the cool part. I went and I interviewed a lot of people. Pete Best, who was the first drummer in the Beatles, he got kicked out and replaced by Ringo Starr. Chris Whitten from Dire Straits, Ian Pace from Deep Purple, Caleb Quaye from the Elton John Band, Denny Sywell from Paul McCartney and Wings. I've also spoken to Tim Staffel, who was the lead singer in Queen before Freddie Mercury joined. And I don't want to plug in my channel here, but you can find them all on YouTube if you're interested in this type of interviewing. These are the unedited interviews, and I think they offer a great window into 1970s rock music. And I'll get to them in a minute. At the end, you see Costin Petrescu and Mihai Farkas, who are 2 of the most well-known Romanian drummers from the 1970s. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the key findings. If there's one thing that I think is important, is that drummers held central performance roles. They combine technical mastery with theatrical stage presence, redefining percussion in modern music. Now, I've spoken before about Professor Valentina Sandudediu's interest in Romanian post-war music, which is the communist period in Romania, where every musician or every artist had to deal with pressure from the communist government and a type of local socialist realism. And under her guidance, we developed, and this is a chapter in my thesis, and it's the first study of its kind at our university, a study of 1970s Romanian progressive rock drummers. This is Costin Petrescu. He built his drum set from scratch because it was almost impossible to find quality instruments in socialist Romania in 1971. And those are goat skins on his tom-toms, not actual plastic skins. This is another famous Romanian drummer. His name is Ovidiu Lipan Țandărică. They had little to no formal musical education. but because they smuggled records into Romania, they managed to create a very unique vocabulary. And this was, as far as I know, this is the first time someone had shed a light academically on this part of Romanian music history, and this is something that I really want to develop in a postdoctoral study soon. So yeah, this brings me back to my relationship with Professor Valentina Sandudediu and the relationship with my committee, my supervising committee. So a few thoughts. She validated the topic from the start, and there was no need to prove that rock music deserved to be studied in our conservatory. We worked through ideas together, and I had complete freedom in choosing topics and methodology. She supported the project institutionally, so she was willing to stand behind this project, which was a bit atypical, and there was trust, and I think this is the takeaway thing here, because I was able to combine interviews, analysis, and performance in my own way in order to bring my passion and this thesis to life. So what does this mean for academia and, well, the in-tune institutions? And I'd like to point out that I know that we come from all over Europe, and there are conservatories in Europe where rock music and pop music are taken a bit more seriously than others. But this applies to some that don't, including UNMB. We can rethink what counts as academic. It doesn't have to be limited to the traditional canon. We can support interdisciplinary work. And again, this, well, depends on each university. We can make space for popular music, especially as something worth studying in its own right. And we can rethink supervision. And I wrote that moving from hierarchy to dialogue, which is the topic here, can really open things up. And I'd like to leave you with a thought. And I said earlier that I've spent most of my life playing rock music. I never thought of myself as a researcher. And to be honest, as much as I love writing about it, if it hadn't been for the openness of Professor Valentina Sandudediu and the supervising committee, I would not have been here to talk about it. So thank you very much.